My name is Ahmed. I am 38 years old, and I have lived my entire life under the weight of expectations I never chose. I was born into a family where Islam was not just faith, but law, where every word, every action, every breath was measured against the Quran and the teachings of the elders. My father was strict and proud, my mother gentle but fearful, always whispering prayers over my cradle, as if the protection of angels could shield me from the judgment of men. I grew up memorizing verses, attending madrasa, performing ablution, praying 5 times a day, reciting the prayers in public with precision, while inside I felt nothing. I remember the nights I would sit alone on the rooftop, looking at the stars, wondering why my heart felt hollow, why my soul felt restless despite obeying everything I was taught. I asked God silently, almost pleading, "Is this all? Is this peace?" My mind told me to obey, to submit, to follow the rituals, but my heart whispered questions I dared not speak. I became good at hiding my doubts, hiding my hunger for something more, hiding my fear. I smiled at the elders, led sermons, guided prayers, and wore the mask of the perfect son, the perfect student, the perfect community leader. Yet each night, when the house was silent, I wept alone, feeling the emptiness gnaw at me, the isolation pressing down, the fear that if anyone ever knew who I truly was, I would be shunned, rejected, maybe worse. Sometimes I would whisper into the darkness, "God, is there more than this?" And the darkness never answered. Not until everything would change. Not until life would shatter the foundations I had clung to. I can still remember the weight of that fear, of the pressure to be perfect, the suffocating silence of a soul trapped between obedience and longing. I had no friends who could understand, no mentor who could guide me toward truth, no hand to hold through the nights of doubt. I was alone. Completely alone except for the questions that burned inside me. Questions about justice, mercy, love, freedom. Questions that Islam had never answered for me. Questions I had learned to hide even from myself, and yet, even in my emptiness, even in my fear, there was a spark, a small, dangerous spark that whispered, "There is more. There must be more." Before I continue, I want to ask you something. Something very simple. If you feel even a fraction of what I feel, if your heart stirs with questions, with hunger for truth, please subscribe to the channel, like, comment, and share. Help spread testimonies like mine so others who are lost, who are searching in the darkness, might find the same hope I eventually found. I am telling you this not to boast, not to preach, not to shame anyone, but because God's love found me even in my fear, even in my hiding, and it is real, and it can find you too. I never expected the cracks to appear so suddenly, never imagined that those I trusted most could wound me so deeply. It began with betrayal, the kind that cuts straight to the soul. The Imam I had followed for years, the man I had admired, confronted me in front of the congregation, twisting my words, accusing me of spreading doubt. My stomach turned to ice, my hands trembled, and I felt a weight pressing on my chest. I had dedicated my life to Islam, to service, to obedience, and yet here was my faith, exposed as fragile, hollow. I walked home that night in silence, my mind replaying every word, every accusation, wondering how trust could be so easily broken. And then life dealt another blow. My younger sister, someone I had loved fiercely, was forced into a marriage she did not want. I tried to intervene, argued with our parents, pleaded with the elders, prayed as hard as I could, but nothing changed. I watched helplessly as her tears were ignored, her cries unheard, and I felt a rage that I could not name. How could God, merciful and just, allow such cruelty? How could a religion that promised justice permit oppression so intimate, so personal? I began to notice the contradictions, the hypocrisies in the teachings I had followed blindly for decades. The verses I had memorized, the hadiths I had recited with pride, suddenly seemed hollow, sometimes even cruel. I questioned everything. Fear gave way to confusion, confusion to despair. I could not pray without bitterness rising in my chest. I could not smile without tasting the bitterness of lies. My community, once a source of comfort, now felt suffocating and hypocritical. I remember sitting on the edge of my bed, staring at the prayer mat I had used since childhood, running my fingers over its worn fabric and feeling nothing. No peace, no presence, only a void. The Imam's words, my father's silence, my sister's tears, they all echoed in that void. I felt unmoored, a man untethered from the life he had built, from the faith he had performed. And in that emptiness, a dangerous, forbidden thought began to grow. Maybe there is more. Maybe there is a truth they have all hidden from me. My mind screamed that it was blasphemy, that I must reject it, but my heart, exhausted and starving, whispered otherwise. I had lived decades in obedience, in fear, in shadow, and now the first spark of freedom flickered in me, trembling but undeniable. I did not yet know where it would lead, only that I could no longer return to the emptiness I had called life. The cracks were wide open, and I was falling into a darkness I could not yet name, a darkness that would soon become the first doorway to light. It started with dreams, small at first, almost easy to dismiss. But then the moments became impossible to ignore. I dreamt of a man standing in a light I could not name, a presence so calm, so piercing, that it felt like he could see every hidden part of me, every fear, every longing. He never spoke words I could hear with my ears, but his presence spoke louder than any sermon I had ever heard. I woke trembling, heart racing, unsure if I had imagined it or if it had really happened. During fasting days, as I sat alone in my room, the shadows seemed to shift, and sometimes I thought I saw him again, just standing, watching, waiting. My mind screamed, "Shaitan, forbidden visions, turn away, you are committing blasphemy." But deep inside, a whisper resisted, saying, "This is truth, this is love, do not be afraid." I began to remember flashes from childhood. The nights I had prayed alone on the rooftop, the nights I had looked at stars and felt a pull towards something greater, something alive, but never understood. Those memories merged with these visions, creating a tapestry of longing I could no longer suppress. I questioned myself constantly. How could a man, a prophet of another faith, appear to me? My life had been bound by rules, by rituals, by fear of man and fear of God, and now here was something I could not explain, something that felt more real than any law I had followed. I began to read, cautiously, about Jesus, peace be upon him, remembering the respect Islam commanded toward him as a prophet, yet sensing that there was something beyond respect, something alive, something that could touch the soul and heal the emptiness inside. I would sit in my office, pretending to work, but my mind wandered, replaying the visions, the feeling of being seen, of being known, of being loved in a way that terrified and thrilled me at once. The more I resisted, the more the visions returned, gentle yet insistent, demanding attention, demanding truth. I started to write in secret, not prayers, not confessions, just my thoughts, my fears, my questions, scribbled in a notebook hidden beneath my mattress. Why am I seeing this? Why now? What is real? Who are you? The questions multiplied, pressing against the walls of my heart. I was no longer only Ahmed, the obedient son, the leader, the man of rituals. I was Ahmed, the seeker, the lost, the trembling, and I was beginning to believe that the man in my dreams, the presence in my room, could be the answer I had been searching for all my life, the first flicker of light in a darkness I had long called home. I began exploring in secret, feeling the weight of every click, every search, every scroll, as if someone might see into my heart and punish me for even thinking. The Bible app became my hidden refuge, my small window into a world I had been taught to fear. I opened it cautiously, and thumb trembling and read words that made my chest ache, Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Matthew 11:28. I felt a warmth I had never known, a comfort I could not name, and yet guilt surged immediately afterward. What am I doing? This is forbidden. Allah will punish me. Stop. But I could not stop. I read and reread, my heart aching, my soul trembling, a strange mix of fear and hope consuming me. I began journaling, writing down everything, dreams, visions, fears, questions, longings. I prayed secretly, whispering words into the darkness, words I had never dared speak aloud. If you are real, show me. If you love me, help me. I am lost. Sometimes I would wake from sleep drenched in sweat, heartbeat pounding, convinced I had seen something, someone, standing in the shadows. And then it happened, the dream that changed everything. I saw him clearly this time. The man I had glimpsed in flickers before, the presence I could never ignore, now spoke to me directly, though not in words my ears could hear. His voice rang inside me, inside my soul, clearer than any sermon, gentler than any prayer I had recited. Ahmed, I am here. Do not be afraid. You are loved. I woke gasping, tears streaming, unable to comprehend what had just happened. I could not eat, could not sleep, could not focus. The entire world felt different. I knew in that moment that I could not unsee what I had seen, could not unknow what I had felt. Something inside me had shifted, irreversibly. I was terrified, yes, because I had no idea what following this presence would cost me. But I was also drawn, irresistibly, up because for the first time in my life, I had felt truth. I began questioning everything I had believed, everything I had done, and everything I thought I wanted. I knew I was standing at the edge of a choice, a precipice. Step into the unknown, into fear and possible rejection, or retreat into the hollow life I had known. I did not yet know what lay ahead, only that nothing could ever be the same. I hid the Bible, I locked the journal, but the dream, the presence, the voice, it followed me everywhere, whispering in my mind, tugging at my heart. I was no longer just Ahmed, the obedient son, the community leader, the perfect Muslim. I was Ahmed, the seeker, the trembling, the one who had glimpsed love that dared me to live, that dared me to believe, that dared me to choose. It happened unexpectedly, almost absurdly. I was visiting a distant relative, walking quietly through their small courtyard, lost in thought, when I noticed her, a teenage girl, barely 16, sitting on the steps with a book in her hands. Her eyes were bright, full of life, and she smiled at me without hesitation. "Hello," she said. "You look tired. You know Jesus loves you, right?" I stopped in my tracks. I blinked, unsure I had heard correctly. Her words were simple, innocent, yet they pierced through the walls I had spent decades building around my heart. I opened my mouth, intending to dismiss her, to tell her she didn't understand, but nothing came out. She tilted her head, and I saw something in her gaze that made my chest tighten. Courage, faith, joy, pure untainted joy. "Why do you believe so freely?" I finally asked, my voice almost a whisper. She laughed softly, a sound that seemed to carry sunlight. "Because he is real. I've seen him in my dreams, and he never leaves me. He's always with me, even when I'm scared." Her words echoed in my mind long after I left. That night, I could not sleep. I lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking of her smile, the certainty in her voice, the way she radiated something I had been chasing my whole life. I thought of the dreams, the visions, the presence that had been following me, tugging at my heart, whispering in silence, and for the first time, I dared to hope. I whispered a prayer I had never spoken before, not aloud, not even in my journal. "Jesus, if you are real, show me the way. I will follow you, even if it costs everything." My hands trembled, my chest ached, my heart raced. I knew in that moment that the choice I made would change everything. And I thought of my family, my community, my life built on obedience and fear. I thought of the shadows I had lived in for 38 years. And yet something inside me stirred, a courage I had never known, a longing I could not ignore. I felt that I could step forward, even into danger, even into rejection, because for the first time, I had seen a glimpse of truth, a flicker of light. The teenage girl, with her fearless faith, had become the spark I needed. I did not yet know the path, I did not yet know the cost, but I knew that I could not turn back. That night, I held my journal close, touched the Bible app on my phone, and felt a trembling resolve settle deep in my chest. I would take the step. I would follow this presence, this voice, this love that had found me in the shadows. I would choose him. I would risk everything. The seed had been planted. The decision was made. And even though fear clung to me like a second skin, hope, pure and dangerous, filled my soul. I never imagined the consequences would come so fast or so violently. I had been careful, quiet, thinking my curiosity, my prayers, my secret Bible readings would remain hidden, but word travels faster than fear. The first confrontation came from my father. His eyes, usually warm with authority, were sharp and accusing, and his voice shook with disbelief. "Ahmed, what are you doing? You have brought shame upon this family. How could you betray us like this?" I felt my chest tighten, my throat dry, but I could not lie. I could not hide anymore. My mother's tears cut me deeper than any anger, and my siblings avoided me, their silence a blade against my heart. Then the community began to turn, and friends I had known since childhood whispered behind my back. Colleagues who once smiled at me now looked with suspicion. The imam who had once mentored me confronted me in private, his tone low and threatening. "Repent, or you will face consequences beyond your understanding." I felt the walls closing in, the weight of fear pressing me to the ground, threatening to crush the spark I had fought so hard to nurture. Nights became unbearable. I could not sleep, could not eat properly, could not focus on anything but the accusations, the shaming, the threats. I walked through the city feeling eyes on me, hearing judgment in every footstep behind me. And yet, in the midst of this firestorm, I began to notice something I had never felt before: clarity. The emptiness I had lived with for decades, the hollow obedience, the fear-driven rituals, all of it had vanished. Even as my world crumbled, I could think clearly. I could see the lies I had been told, the hypocrisy I had been forced to follow, the contradictions in teachings that had once seemed perfect. Flashbacks haunted me. The nights of blind prayer, the sermons that left me hollow, the years spent performing for approval. And now, those memories only strengthened my resolve. I began to ask myself a question I had never dared before. Do I want to live in fear and obedience, or do I want to live in truth, even if it costs everything? Each threat, each accusation, each rejection only pushed me closer to the answer. I was terrified. I was lonely. I was facing a storm no human should endure. And yet, I felt a presence, a whisper of peace, the same voice from my dreams reminding me, "Do not be afraid. You are loved." When I repeated it silently over and over, clinging to it like a lifeline, even as the fire of judgment raged around me, I realized then that the cost of following this presence, this love, this truth, was immense. My family, my reputation, my security, everything I had known could be gone. And yet, I understood that nothing could compare to the freedom of following him, of stepping out of the shadows into a light that promised life, even in the face of suffering. I was terrified, yes, but for the first time, I was alive in a way I had never known. And that terror, that isolation, that firestorm of backlash only confirmed the truth I had glimpsed. Some things are worth everything. The day I chose him publicly is etched in my memory like fire and water fused together. I woke early, heart pounding, knowing that from this moment, nothing would ever be the same. I held a small worn Bible in my hands, the pages soft under my fingers, and I felt the weight of every expectation, every fear, every consequence pressing on me. My family would never understand. My community would condemn me. Even my own heart trembled with doubt. And yet, the presence I had glimpsed in dreams, the voice that whispered love and courage, urged me forward. I stood before a small gathering, friends and relatives and strangers, and I spoke words I had never dared speak. I follow Jesus. I cannot hide him anymore. He is my Lord. The silence that followed was suffocating. Some gasped, others whispered, a few stared at me with eyes full of disbelief, and I saw anger and sorrow in my father's face, fear in my mother's. My chest ached with the enormity of what I had done. But beneath that ache was a strange peace, a calm that I could not have imagined before. I spent hours afterward reading the Gospels, praying, letting His love wash over me, feeling a courage I had never known. The tension between worldly safety and spiritual freedom weighed heavily, but I realized that the scales had already tipped. I had chosen life. I had chosen truth. And then came the confrontation I had feared most. My uncle, a man of authority in our community, approached me, his face stormy, his voice low and dangerous. "Ahmed, you have disgraced your family, your faith, your community. Repent, or you will face consequences beyond your understanding." I felt my palms sweat, my stomach knot, and a surge of old fear rise in me, demanding that I bend, that I apologize, that I return to the life I had known. But something deep inside, something that had been growing quietly through dreams, visions, and whispered prayers, flared up. I looked him in the eye, and for the first time I was not afraid. "I will not turn back," I said firmly, my voice steady despite the trembling in my chest. "Jesus is my Lord, and I will follow him, no matter the cost." The room seemed to freeze. His mouth opened, closed, and opened again, unable to find words. I could feel the weight of centuries of fear, obedience, and tradition pressing against me, but I also felt a strange lightness, a freedom that I had never known. For the first time, I realized that choosing him was not about defiance or rebellion. It was about truth, about life, about finally stepping out of the shadows and into the presence of a love that would never leave me. I felt the presence I had glimpsed in dreams surround me, comforting, steady, and I knew, with absolute certainty, that I had made the only choice that truly mattered. Fear remained, yes, but it no longer ruled me. I had chosen the cross, and in that choice, I found life. The final confrontation came not with shouting, not with fists, but with a weight that pressed on my soul like nothing I had ever known. My uncle, the authority I had feared, stood before me, eyes sharp, voice low, each word deliberate, designed to break me. "Ahmed, you have disgraced your family, your community, your faith. Repent now, or face consequences you cannot imagine." My heart pounded, my hands shook, and I felt the shadows of doubt creeping in, threatening to swallow me whole. Memories flashed violently, the years of obedience, the nights of hollow prayer, or the sermons that left me empty, the faces of loved ones I feared I had lost. Inside me, a battle raged, a storm of fear, guilt, and longing for safety. Part of me wanted to bow, to kneel, to return to the life I had known, to hide in the shadows of comfort and approval. But another part, a part I had nurtured in secret, whispered courage. It whispered truth. "Do not be afraid. You are loved." I drew a shaky breath, feeling the weight of decades pressing on me, and yet I knew deep in my soul that I could not betray what I had glimpsed, what I had felt, what I had come to know. "I cannot turn back," I said, my voice trembling but firm. "I follow Jesus. He is my Lord, and nothing you say or do can change that." His eyes narrowed, and I could see the anger, the disbelief, the sense of betrayal etched deep into his face. He stepped closer, and I could feel the threat radiating from him, but I stood my ground. In that moment, the presence I had known in dreams and visions surrounded me. I felt it wrap around my fear, hold it, steady it, and whisper again, "You are not alone. You are loved. You are free." I closed my eyes for a second, remembering the teenage girl whose courage had ignited the spark in me. The dreams where his voice called my name. The nights of hidden prayers and secret tears. I opened them again and said, with quiet authority, "I forgive you." The words shocked him, and I could see the shift, tiny, fragile, but undeniable. It was not victory in the eyes of the world, not revenge, not triumph of power. It was a victory of truth, courage, and love over fear, guilt, and control. I felt the storm inside me settle slightly, the tension easing, on a calm I had never known washing over my soul. I had faced the fear I had carried for decades. I had confronted the authority, the tradition, the weight of expectations. And in doing so, I had discovered something far greater than I had ever imagined. Moral courage, spiritual freedom, and the abiding presence of a love that would never leave me. The confrontation did not end with applause or celebration. It ended with silence, thick, uncomfortable, and yet somehow liberating. I stood there, trembling, exhausted, but alive in a way I had never been. The shadows had not disappeared, but they no longer ruled me. I had chosen truth. I had chosen love. I had chosen life in him, and nothing could take that away. After the storm, after the fear, after the confrontation, I began to understand what it truly meant to be free. I found community, not in mosques, not in the places I had known, but in believers who understood fear, rejection, and the cost of following Jesus. Some were near, some far, connected only through screens and small gatherings in secret homes, but their love and acceptance were real. I joined online Bible studies, prayed with people who had walked through shadows like mine, and listened as they shared their struggles and victories. Each conversation, each prayer, each shared verse became a thread weaving a new life around me, a tapestry stronger than fear, deeper than isolation. Peace began to fill spaces that had been hollow for decades. My chest no longer ached with the weight of judgment. My heart no longer trembled at whispers in the streets. Joy, quiet but persistent, seeped into the corners of my life. And I read the Gospels and felt the words come alive, not as doctrine or obligation, but as promises of love, hope, and redemption. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. John 10:10 pulsed in my soul, no longer distant, no longer abstract. I reflected on the cost I had paid, the family's anger, the friend's rejection, the constant threat of discovery. But in this reflection, I felt no regret. Every step, every tear, every sleepless night had led me to this. A freedom I could not have imagined in the life I had known. I could pray openly now, though still cautious in public, and I could feel him near, steadying me, comforting me, calling me his own. Even the shadows of fear that lingered were tempered by his love. I began to see that faith was not just about rules, rituals, or fear. It was about relationship, trust, and surrender. I saw my own heart change, the bitterness of betrayal and isolation giving way to compassion, patience, and courage. I laughed again, genuinely, not with the mask I had worn for decades, but with the lightness of someone who had tasted true love. And in that laughter, in that quiet peace, I found hope, not just for myself but for others. I wanted to tell them, to share what I had found, to show that even in the darkest places, even when the cost seems unbearable, God's love can reach in, steady the trembling, and bring life where there was none. I am Ahmed, a man who once hid in shadows, a man who once feared even his own heart, and now I am alive in him. I have found a family of believers who pray for me, encourage me, and walk with me. I have found joy in the midst of trials, peace in the aftermath of fear, and hope that cannot be shaken. And I tell you this because if you are lost, if you are searching, If you feel the emptiness I once felt, know this. He is real, He is near, He loves you, and in Him you can find freedom too. Looking back, I see the shadowed life I lived, the fear that ruled my every step, the obedience that drained my soul. I remember the nights alone on the rooftop, staring at stars I could never reach, the prayers that felt empty, the sermons that left me hollow. I see now how far I have come, how much the light of His presence has changed me. Every tear, every secret prayer, every trembling heartbeat was a step toward this new dawn, toward a life I could not have imagined. I see my family, my community, the faces that once held judgment and anger, and I forgive them, not because it was easy, but because I have been forgiven, and I cannot live in the chains of bitterness. Peace fills me now, a deep, steady peace that no fear can shake. Joy lives in my heart, quiet but unyielding, a witness to the love that found me when I had nowhere to turn. I have a family now too, a spiritual family who walks with me, prays with me, and teaches me daily what it means to follow Him fully. I have learned that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to stand in truth despite it. Hope is not the absence of hardship, but the trust that He is present in every trial. And love is not a fleeting feeling, but a presence that transforms every broken part of your life. I am Ahmed. I followed Jesus. I chose Him when it was terrifying, when the cost was immense, when the world seemed to collapse around me. And yet, I would choose Him again in a heartbeat. His love, His presence, His grace has changed everything. I look at the past now, not with regret, but with gratitude, because it led me to Him. And I speak to you who are listening, who may feel lost, trapped, or afraid. Courage is possible. Hope is real. And the love of Jesus is not a story, not a dream, not a distant promise. It is real. It is near. It is for you. You do not have to hide. You do not have to live in fear. Step into the light, even if it terrifies you, even if it costs you everything you thought you knew. Because in Him, in His love, in His truth, you will find freedom, peace, and life beyond anything you could imagine. This is my story, my journey, my new dawn. And I tell it not to boast, but to testify that even in the darkest places, even in the harshest shadows, Jesus Christ can find you, change you, and set you free.